The greatest retirement crisis in United States history has already begun, and official agencies are warning about the looming catastrophe that's about to hit older Americans. Without enough savings or assets, 80% of households with older adults are at risk of falling into economic insecurity as they age. But don't be mistaken, the impact on younger generations will be just as disastrous, they say. With seniors taking longer in the workforce to be able to make ends meet, younger workers are losing precious opportunities to advance their careers and start saving for their retirement too. A new analysis by Fidelity Investments exposes that this snowballing crisis is going to lower everyone's standard of living over the next few years and continue to widen the inequality gap that's leaving each generation a little poorer than the one before. That's what we're going to investigate in today's video. But before moving on, we kindly ask you to support our work with a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our upcoming videos. A couple of weeks ago, Fidelity Investments released a new analysis on the state of retirement security in America, and its findings were truly alarming. According to Ronald P. O'Hanley, the firm's president of asset management and corporate services, the United States will not be able to avert a looming catastrophe in the retirements of millions of older Americans who are now headed for destitute financial futures and old ages spent in poverty. O'Hanley stressed that the current retirement crisis will have a disastrous effect on everyone in the country, not just the elderly, and this could impact generations to come. If tens of millions of Americans reach retirement age with insufficient savings, the impact on our citizens, our economy, and our national security will be catastrophic and not something we can solve for most retirees after the fact, he highlighted. I'm not sure what would be worse, he continued, millions of elderly unable to house and feed themselves, or the intergenerational strife that surely would erupt if young people are forced to lower their standards of living just to pay for our failure to act in a timely manner to avert this crisis. Over the past 30 years, the transition from employer-funding pensions to employee-funded, self-directed retirement accounts contributed to a savings shortfall of $14 trillion, and that's according to the National Institute on Retirement Savings. At this point, it's evident that the nation's private retirement system is failing the vast majority of Americans. Fidelity data shows that today, 40% of retiree households do not have sufficient income to cover their monthly expenses, O'Hanley said. Well over half of all Americans have less than $25,000 in total savings, and that's not counting the value of their primary residence or pension plans, and 28% have put aside less than $1,000. And these are the people who actually have access to an employer-sponsored retirement plan. More than 1 in 3 working Americans don't even have that, including the federal tax deferrals and often the employer contribution matches that plans offer. What's even more worrying about these woefully inadequate savings, he explained, is that they'll be relied upon to fund ever-lengthening retirements courtesy of otherwise celebratory longevity gains. Most demographers believe that the first person to live to 150 is alive today, O'Hanley stressed. Think about funding that retirement. On top of all that, the executive notes the United States is a nation with low levels of financial literacy that makes it difficult for many people to understand how to live within a budget, to save and invest for the future. In our schools, we teach children about sex and drugs, but not about money, he emphasized. No wonder why the overwhelming majority of households with older adults are financially struggling today or at risk of falling into economic insecurity as they age. A separate analysis by the National Council on Aging revealed that most older Americans continue to lack the resources that would allow them to weather a financial shock, such as a significant long-term care need, a health issue, or loss of income due to divorce or widowhood. The agency found that 80% or 47 million households with older adults are facing mounting challenges to make ends meet in 2023 and are vulnerable to experiencing poverty at retirement. Moreover, despite older adults' preference to age in place, 60% would be unable to afford 2 years of in-home long-term services and support, and 45% of people 60 and older had household incomes below the elder index value for their geography. In other words, their average income was below what they needed to afford basic living needs. Analysts also noticed that this trend is worsening over time, as 90% of older households have experienced decreases in income and the net value of wealth between 2019 and 2022. About the same rate of seniors, or 89%, are worried that the U.S. is in the grip of a retirement crisis, and nearly half said they may never be able to retire. A recent survey from the American Advisors Group detailed that 47% of seniors rated the conditions of their retirement savings as poor, and 44% said they had not saved enough to retire comfortably. Additionally, 57% said they were somewhat or not optimistic that the savings would last through retirement. The rising cost of living and inflation has made it hard for 40% of the respondents to stay afloat financially in the past year. 52% said it was challenging to put funds aside for retirement. Although the inflation peak is seemingly behind us, U.S. consumers are still coping with high prices on essentials like food, gas, and shelter. The retirement savings crisis is a real thing, AAG Chief Marketing Officer Chris Moshner said in a statement. Our data highlights the severity of the crisis and the actions seniors are taking to keep their heads above the water. To afford everyday necessities, 60% of seniors said they've cut back on discretionary expenses, with many scaling back on dining out, traveling, and entertainment, according to the survey. At the same time, 62% of adult children are worried that the cost of living crisis is impacting their parents' retirement savings, with many, 35%, worried that they'll have to help their senior parents financially. Amid this anxiety over whether their parents will have enough retirement savings, a growing number of adults are planning about using their parents' home equity as a financial solution, the survey said. In inflationary times like these, a reverse mortgage is one option seniors can utilize to generate increased cash flow by unlocking their home equity and easing the pressures on everyday expenses, Moshner said. However, only 18% of those 62 and older would benefit from using their home equity to pay for long-term care and other expenses should the need arise. The remaining 82% may actually not have enough home equity to cover these costs due to the ongoing correction in housing prices and the economic recession that is upon us. With the exception of the bottom 20%, many older adults hold most of their financial assets in the property value of their homes. But in times of economic volatility, their wealth is significantly reduced and their prospects for equity growth are severely compromised. For that very reason, about a third of Americans over traditional retirement age, between 65 and 74, are expected to be still working in 2030, a recent Voya financial survey said. In 2000, only 19% of those between 65 and 74 were working. Known as employment extenders, this group has started to save a bit too late in the game, and their chances of ever reaching retirement security are very small. What is particularly alarming is that most are not planning for the possibility that they may be physically unable to work or have a loved one who needs ongoing medical care, even though both these circumstances have high probabilities, the survey said. Despite the fact that 40% of adults aged 65 years and older are living with a disability today, just 36% are planning that they might not be physically able to work as long as they want, and only 13% are thinking about not being mentally able to work as long as they want, researchers noted. The increase in older workers staying on their jobs is causing concerns amongst business owners too, because employers have been expecting their expensive older workers to retire, which would open senior-level jobs for younger workers looking to advance their careers. In fact, 60% of corporations have been expecting the older members of their workforce to move on as naturally as they age into qualifying for Social Security and could start making withdrawals from tax-deferred retirement accounts without penalty. The expectation was that younger workers with different skills could help reshape how they do business. But given that age discrimination by employers is illegal, it's risky to target older workers. This could be very bad news for middle-aged and younger workers trying to pay off their debts and save for retirement. Saddled with student loans and credit card debt, young Americans are being struck by the second recession in their lifetimes and also facing wage stagnation and high levels of income inequality. According to a survey from Wells Fargo, 2/3 of workers with student loans say student debt is preventing them from saving for retirement. The effects are evident, with 45% of millennials having less than $25,000 in personal savings. Ted Rossman, an analyst at creditcards.com, said wage stagnation is hindering younger generations. Adjusted for inflation, average hourly wages have barely budged in 50 years. But some major expenses such as housing and college have grown exponentially, he explained. In other words, the current retirement crisis is reaching such alarming proportions that other generations are missing key opportunities to become financially independent, debt-free, and able to build wealth to afford their own retirements when the time arrives. This is going to create major distortions in our economy and continue to impoverish younger Americans who may never enjoy the same standard of living their parents and their grandparents once had. Middle-aged workers are also being squeezed by an increasingly smaller pool of middle-class jobs and rising competition for these roles. For this group, the risks are even more pronounced, especially considering the timeline they have to ramp up their savings. At the end of the day, this crisis is going to impact each and every one of us as it erodes our quality of life and delays our collective growth. Thank you for watching.